This is a video from the can because I'm in Cologne for a few days and away from social media, so I won't be interacting with you guys when it unlocks. Imagine for a moment a map of the United Kingdom. A 100% accurate map of the entire United Kingdom. It is so incredibly detailed that you can see individual pebbles lurking out from underneath the surface of your neighbor's garden pond. The only problem is that this map is exactly as large as the United Kingdom. We'll ignore coastline paradoxes for a moment here because this is a metaphor. When using this map, you might as well just drive out to the place you want to know information about and look it up yourself in person. It is completely useless for any of the things that maps are good for. This is the reason why maps are not all that accurate. They have to be a lot smaller than the area they represent, and so a lot of detail just gets lost. There's different levels of map, right? Instead of a UK map, you can have a map of England that's exactly as large on the paper, but it has a lot more detail because it represents a smaller area. You can see suburbs and townships, bigger townships, they're all marked in there. There's more roads to navigate by. It's a higher level of detail than the UK map. Instead of that, you might get a map of the Greater London area where you can make out individual city blocks and roads, albeit tiny. And instead of that, you might get a map of the City of London, where you can make out individual buildings quite well, and maybe even taxi stands in the side of the road. If you want to go even deeper than that, you could get a floor plan of St. Paul's Cathedral and see the relief of individual walls and see the position of individual pillars within the structure. The problem is that if you only have a floor plan of St. Paul's Cathedral, you have no idea how to get to Leadenhall Market, and you also can't get a general idea of what it looks like. If you have a map of the City of London, you have no idea how big it is compared to the other boroughs of London, or where within London it is even located. If you have a map of the Greater London area, you cannot find out where Bournemouth is in relation to it, or what geographical region Bournemouth is in. If you have a map of England, you can't find out how to get to Edinburgh. So increased detail has the trade-off of the bigger picture being lost. And the more you go into the bigger picture, the less detail you are able to make out. The same is true for language, right? This is why we have textbooks that cover the entirety of biology as a science, that are the exact same size as textbooks that cover the reproductive behavior of fungi on the Isle of Barbados. There is a chapter on fungi in the biology textbook, and there's even a passage that explains their reproductive behavior. The textbook of that topic on Barbados just goes into a whole lot more detail on that whole situation. And even if it directly contradicts something that the higher biology textbook says, that doesn't mean that the general biology textbook is wrong. It just means that probably it wasn't detailed enough to catch the specific nuance, or that this specific thing is just different on Barbados. I know nothing about fungi on Barbados, by the way. This is an example. I sucked it out of my ass. It's here now. I could have gone with Jamaica. I could have gone with the Shetland Islands. I could have gone with islands that don't even exist. I could have gone with different topics here. I could have had the reproductive behavior of... Now, when two or more people are having a political discussion, we should be working under that very same assumption. These are incredibly complex topics, right? Every facet of them has a million layers, and every single one of those layers has a billion ways of looking at it. We need to simplify them in order to be physically capable of talking about them. If we went into the greatest possible detail about every single aspect of the ideas that we are discussing, we would not only just reach the limit of data that the human mind can handle at one time, but we'd also starve to death before even finishing our initial arguments. This is why anecdotal arguments are bullshit. They zoom into a situation to a degree that we can no longer see the larger elements that are at play. There's always a deeper layer to be unpacked in anything that is ever said, but doing so most of the time is just utterly pointless. The only thing it does is obfuscate the conversation. As much as a lot of people would like you to believe they are, generalizations are not a bad thing. They are excellent tools to comprehend and categorize vast trends and ideas. They can be used to strip away the bullshit and eliminate as many factors as possible to look at them in an isolation that is scientific. I mean, literally half of what the scientific process is stripping away the bullshit. and reducing an experiment to as few factors as humanly possible, right? Let's make a controversial statement, right? Black fathers leave their children. This is an accurate statement, as there are black fathers and they do leave their children. Now, there are, of course, also white fathers who leave their children, and the statement white fathers leave their children is also 100% correct. However, it is irrelevant to the discussion. It is not what we want to talk about. We want to talk about black fathers leaving their children. This is a phenomenon that happens disproportionately to this group of people. We don't know why, but we could find out. That is why we're having this discussion. So if you tell someone, hey, let's talk about the issue of black fathers leaving their children, pretty much everybody knows what you're talking about. Now, there are people who are offended that anyone would ever talk about this for some reason. I'm sure they have one, right? They get uncomfortable at the notion that other people are having a discussion about something they would rather not have discussed. So what they will try to do is change the resolution of the discussion being had in order to obfuscate it. They will say, oh, I know plenty of black fathers who don't leave their children, thereby zooming in too much into the group of black fathers so we can no longer see the bigger picture. Often they will do this with the argument that it's bad to generalize and that you have to notice that hashtag not all, but really the only bad thing is when you apply a generalization to an individual. The statement that a disproportionate amount of black fathers leave their children is 100% accurate. However, if you meet a random black father on the street, you can't point at him and say, this person left their child, because you don't know. It's nonsense. It's a generalization. You cannot apply it to an individual person in that group. If you apply generalizations to individuals, you are a fucking idiot. And the same is true if you assume that people who use generalizations apply those generalizations to the individuals they are about. You can have the same issue the other way around, by the way, where you say black fathers leave their children, and then somebody says, but what about all fathers? There's all father groups, all the groups of fathers, they all leave their children to some capacity. And then you zoom out. You now have a bigger map that doesn't provide the level of detail that you require to have this conversation. You also have the people who will engage in whataboutisms and say, but what about white fathers? And that's basically akin to giving you a different map entirely. I'm not saying that zooming out to a higher level, to a bigger, less accurate picture, or zooming in 1 or 2 levels to a smaller, more accurate picture isn't useful, because it definitely is. You should look at what black fathers who don't leave their children do differently, what their different life circumstances are, what their situation is. You should also look at the greater implications of people leaving their children, of fathers leaving their children in other cultural and ethnic groups. Though, to be honest, it's mostly cultural. It's not really ethnic, the reason that these people are bound together. I mean, then again, it is America, and America has a very unhealthy obsession with race. But beware of people trying to get you into a gotcha because you're not using the map that they expect you to be using, right? Those people, the only thing that they want is to stop you from having a conversation, and such people are never to be trusted. At the end of the day, finding the best level of generalization and simplification to have the discussion that you want to have without becoming too imprecise and the discussion becoming just as useless is more art than science, but it does need to be precise. The same goes for when to zoom in and out across different layers to maybe catch some detail or see a bigger picture, you know? Thank you all very much for watching. As I've already said, right now I'm in Cologne, not on social media at all, so do whatever it is you would have done if I wasn't there. In that spirit, see you around, cunts.